Hello and welcome. In this tutorial I will show you how to create a realistic looking tree in the Plant Factory with a minimal number of nodes and a minimal complexity. This was inspired by a webinar done by Daniel Zeebacker a while ago, in which he's shown this technique. I have modified it a bit to suit my needs, but you'll see that it is quite simple. Afterwards we will surface it, we will texture the trunk and texture the leaves using Megascan's assets and render it in Cinema 4D Octane Render. Let's first start by adding a trunk segment in the geometry, and we'll keep it default. Mostly all what we'll do is add a little variation to the 8th and to a little perturbation to it, but a slight one, so that it's not entirely straight. What we also need to do is to modify the width of the segment. We'll have it more wider at the top. Then we'll handle the branches using what is called the loop in the Plant Factory. So if I load all the components of the loop, let's add them here. And we have the standard behavior of branches added to a trunk in the Plant Factory. We'll need to modify this because what I want is the branches to start from the tip of the tree. So in order to do so, let's go to the segment and to its child, and change the placement. The placement should be tip of the segment. So now it starts from the tip. We'll also change the number of children elements starting from the tip, and in this parameter, the wall here, we'll add 3 and 1. Okay, it still does not look very realistic because here it's noticeably thinner than elsewhere. So we'll handle this by changing the branch segment. We'll reduce its length because we'll be using several branching segments, and add a little variation too, maybe even more. We'll change, we'll reset these filters because we want some length here, and reset this one too. We need the branch segment to be more to be wider, so let's go to 75%, and there we have our first branching segment. We need the other branches to start from the tip too in order to do the whole branching. So we'll change this parameter in the branch segment and in its children parameters. So instead of axis of the segment, we'll do tip of the segment, and then same thing, wall 3, 1. Now we don't see anything because in the repeat node we only have 1. Let's increase it to 2, and we have the first section, 3, 4, and this is a warning because we have some meshing problems here. In order to solve them, let's go to root, meshing, and switch to automatic adaptive. This changes the polygon distribution and adds more polygons in the problem areas. Okay, we were at 4, 5. We're starting to have lots of branches, which is normal, and 6. I'll stay at 6, but in this demo Daniel Zeebacker was going to 10. But he was using only branches with two children. I'm using 3, even 4 at some times, so it's more. The last branch is a little too thick for my taste, so we'll go to the branch segment and reduce the inherit ratio. We'll change this little filter and we'll reduce it as much as we need. Okay. Now the branches are quite straight, so let's add a little perturbation to them too. That's a little too much, but we could use this for some types of trees. Could be useful, but that's not what we are looking for right now. Now we have something that looks more like a tree, but we need some branches on the sides too. Because well, we are going to do some kind of oak tree, so unless we want a shorter trunk, we need some branches on the sides. To put some branches on the sides, just get this node connector and connect it to a new child, and it automatically connects to the sides of the trunk. We'll need to adjust a few parameters because we want branches but only at the upper part. So let's go to the second repeat and adjust the start to, let's say, 0.5. So the branches are now starting higher on the trunk, but we have two problems. The connection for these branches is not really well done, so let's tick the blending, and now it blends better with the trunk, and all the branches start in a parallel mode. They are all parallel to the trunk. So let's change the orientation, coil, 90% and 180% variation. Whoops, maybe just the 190% variation. So now the branches start from all around the trunk. One thing we can do with these branches is reduce the length of the final branches, because in some cases we'll have the leaves too far from the main part of the tree. Let's go to the first branching, which is the one at the tip, and adjust this parameter here, the sap, and as you can see, it reduces the length of the last part of the segment. The first part is largely untouched. We need to do this twice because the trunk has two children. Let's do the branches on the sides, and you can even adjust the shape of the tree by doing so. If you do things like this, you adjust the length of the first branching and reduce the ones of the last branches. See on the sides, well, doesn't work. So maybe let's go back to the top and a little more length. Now we have the basic shape of our tree. We can adjust a few things in the branch segment in order to make it more realistic or change it according to our tastes. The tropism is handling the fact that branches go towards the ground. If you put one here, they go up. If you put -1, they'll go down. We can use a parameter in the between, 0.3 or even 0.3, and then we can edit one of these filters so that only the top branches are going up. That's one little add-on. Now let's go to the last section of the branches and add some leaves. Maybe could be a bit thinner. not that thin. Yes, that's okay. Now we need leaves at the last branching segment. So we have a connector which is called end that we'll use to do so. We'll connect it to a new child in the branches and connect one leaf geometry to it. Okay. Now the leaf geometry was created at the very end and on the sides of the branches. We'll change a few things about the leaves, make them larger. 1.5, 2, and add a few more leaves. So in order to change the distribution of the children, we need to go to the branch segment and to this segment here, the end. What we want is to add more leaves by adding groups of them. So again, 3, 1. So now we have 2, 3 or 4 leaves instead of 1. And we want them to be more horizontal. In real trees, the leaves tend to go horizontal to catch more light. So changing this horizontropism parameter will solve the problem. One thing we would like also is to have leaves at the tip. So just connect, like we did for the side branches, the connector to a new segment, to a new child, and then adjust the placement in the child tip of the segment, and we have our leaves here. We'll make them in groups, and don't forget to make them horizontal too. Now we have our tree ready to texture. So we'll first add the trunk and load a default texture in the trunk, a default material, which can be twisted oak bark. As you can see, it repeats quite a lot, so let's go to the trunk and change a few things in the material, check parametric, and then add some tiling, 2 and 2. So it looks better than it did, more natural. Now maybe the leaves could be even larger. Let's handle the leaf materials. We want to use leaf materials from Megascans. Let's go to the quick sell Megascans bridge, sorry, and we'll be using these oak leaves from Megascans. That's a very nice leaf, and the idea is to have 4 different leaf textures alternating on the tree. So we need to extract these leaf textures from the image here. They are all on the same image. We need some individual ones. So let's open them in the folder, which is here, and we have all the leaves as they are on our folder with the little preview. In Photoshop, we will select the albedo map and import it. So now it's imported to a new image, and we'll add all the layers that we need. We need the normal map, opacity, roughness, and translucency, and we will all add them there. Let's put the opacity at the top so that we can easily see the limits of the different leaves, and let's rename the layers. We'll just keep the underscore name at the end of the name. This one we'll name it underscore diffuse. Okay. I don't think, yeah, okay. So from the diffuse map, I choose the first map I will use on my tree, which will be maybe this one. In order to select it, I will use the magic wand, and on the opacity layer, click here to select all the map, and go to Image, Crop. I'm translating because my version of Photoshop is in French, unfortunately, on the last reinstall. Cropping it gives us the exact size of the leaf we want to use, and then we only have to export it. Export and layer to files, and then we'll name it leaf O and export it. Normally we'll repeat the process each time for each leaf we want to use, each leaf texture. I've already done it for 3 others, but here are the files we already extracted. I'll put them with the leaves I already have in my tutorial folder, and we now have all these leaves to use. We'll try to use one in the Plant Factory. Let's load it here. That's not the right directory. My maps are in resources. Not sure even. No, it's in subdividing tree. So my maps are all here. It's a bit messy, but here's the diffuse map, the first one, and we need to add an alpha map, or at least update the alpha map with this one. Invert it. And we have the first leaf. Well, we won't go any further with that leaf, but as you can see, it's already used on the tree. Now we need to create some variations. The Plant Factory enables you to add any number of maps on the leaves and use alternating maps. So no, I'm not on the right segment. Inherit from parents. I'm not in the leaf segment. This was a bit buggy. So now we need to create alternate materials. We'll create a few additional ones. Well, in fact, can we duplicate copy material, this material? I create base material. This is far faster, and then a new one. Oops, no, this is not, because we only use 2 materials, so we need to create another one. New one, and paste. Okay, Currently we are only using the same leaf texture, but we'll create the other ones, and then add a last one. So we'll be using 4 different leaf textures on this tree. Let's paste the last one. So now let's go to leaf 1 and load leaf 1 plus the projected map. Leaf 1, invert it. Okay, so we now have 2 different maps. Third map, let's edit the function directly. Third map is that one. We'll also load the transparency, again invert colors, and okay. 3 different ones, and the last one, edit function. We are loading the 4th one, which is here, and the transparency map, invert, and it's okay. So now we have 4 different maps used on this tree, and let's check them out. As you can see, a good diversity of maps, and a rather realistic looking tree. It was generated from 1, 2, 3 elements and a repeat node. Let's see what it looks like in a rendering environment in Octane Render. So we'll export it as a mesh, and oak tree 1, export. So the export is now generated. What I wanted to show you before leaving to Octane is that you can generate variants of this tree, endless variants. You can change the height, you can change the width of the trunk, you can change any parameter and generate a new tree, export it again, and then re-import it in Octane Render or in Cinema 4D or in any program that can import OBJ files, because I exported it to OBJ. Let's go to Cinema 4D and import. I'm using an environment which is adapted to Octane Render with the preview here, and let's import, well, merge objects. Yes. And there are lots of tests here. I think it should have been here. Tree test. No, it's not. Let's go back and export it, because yeah, little issue here. Oak tree. Okay, that should be fine. Probably did not export. It probably exported itself at the one directory higher. So here it is. Yes, that's this one. Let us change the scale to meters and import. It's black. That's because my camera is right on the tree, and here is the tree. We did not import the materials because we will recreate all of them in Octane. Okay, here's the geometry. In order to recreate them, we'll convert the materials to Octane standards and remove the used materials. We have all the leaves and the trunk. let's start with the trunk. I used a default the Plant Factory material there, so we'll find the export here and re-import the maps, use them on the trunk. So here it is, and let's work on the leaves now. So leaf 0, 5 maps. Okay, so that's the translucency. So Octane the Plant Factory exported the materials and exported them as glossy materials. They were translated as glossy. We need to make them diffuse in order to get the transmission, the translucency of the leaves. Opacity and roughness. We have our first leaf ready. Second one. It's a bit tedious, but opacity, diffuse, and transmission. Third one. Each time I update the leaves, they update also on the rendered view. So that's leaf 2. Choose. See. Roughness. Normal. And the last. Okay. Diffuse, okay. Transmission. All. Roughness. Opacity and diffuse. Now we have all the textures. We can zoom in on the tree to see how they behave. Generally the Megascan textures are quite nice, and having different textures on the tree makes them a little more realistic. What we could have done is make the end branches a bit thinner. We can still make corrections on the file, but as for now I will leave it as it is. So as you can see, it's quite easy to create trees with this method. You can also refine things a bit by adding more geometry and change the shapes and create variants. For instance, for this tree I could add a dead branches with specific textures to add some variants on the full tree. The next step for me would be to add this tree in the natural scene, and we'll see this in the next tutorial.